Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 344 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and this week I'm joined by Charlie. How are you doing, mate? All the way from Gibraltar, where I imagine it's a bit more pleasant than it is here in Blighty. You well, mate?
I'm very well, yes. Lovely weather, of course. I feel like that's just like a standard introduction when I'm on the podcast now. It's just a little weather conversation because it is obviously a lot nicer here than it is, well, anywhere back in the UK, I think. But yeah, no, I'm good. Did you have a good Christmas, Ben?
Yeah, it was really nice, mate. Yeah, we've been hosting for the first time in the new gaff, so it was it's been busy but enjoyable. We've had lots of telly's been watched, lots of food and alcohol has been consumed. It has been very, very enjoyable week. But of course, we are now in that period that my friend once christened Crimbo Limbo. So we don't know what day it is. We don't know what time it is. We don't know, what's going on. So Crimbo Limbo is absolutely where we are. I think this is the first time we've ever done a podcast on a Saturday. We're playing tomorrow on a Sunday. It's a bit mad, but how was the first Christmas away from Blighty? Was it all right? I'm guessing it was a cold beer outside and all the rest of it.
Yes, there was plenty of cold beers and many other alcoholic beverages. No, it was good because at the end of the day, it was the first Christmas that I actually spent away from family as well. So I can't say I enjoyed it too much because just in case my mum ends up watching these like she normally does. But no, it was really good. It was nice. Spent it with some friends. We went and had Christmas dinner on a yacht. So that was nice.
Bloody hell! Big time Beeston's back, isn't he?
No, it's one of the hotels here is like a permanently moored yacht. That they kind of renovated into a hotel. So we had Christmas dinner there, and it was really nice. And just spending it again with just a group of friends, just drinking and eating literally from 10 a.m. in the morning all the way through till midnight, basically. So it was really nice. Really enjoyed it. Got a couple of little like gifts and such to open from friends, and we did Secret Santa and things like that. So yeah, like I say, different for me, but it was nice, and I actually felt a little bit more nostalgic, weirdly, because when I was younger, we used to often go away and abroad for Christmas with the family. We kind of got the decision by my parents at like the age of 10 was, look, you can either have presents from Santa Claus, or Santa Claus can help pay for you to go on a holiday every Christmas. So we used to always like go away to Benidorm or somewhere like that for a week. So actually being back out like abroad for Christmas was a little bit more nostalgic for me than it probably is for many other people. So it was it was really nice with that.
Ah, that's good. And speaking of Santa Claus, did he get the memo that you'd moved? Did you get anything nice?
Yeah, like I said, a few sort of gifts from a couple of friends of mine, which was very nice. And obviously chocolates, socks, and smellies. Not a Lynx Africa though. It was Lynx Black, which was rather disappointing because it is part of the bingo card, isn't it, Lynx Africa? But I didn't get any. And then, to be fair, like parents and such sent a couple of bits over, a little bit of money and such that I can go out and do a bit of a shopping spree. But that just all went on the horses and the football betting on Boxing Day.
Charlie, of course it did.
What about yourself? Did Santa bring you any Lincoln City gifts?
No Lincoln City gifts as such. Although there is one that got announced after Christmas that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the pod. But just relatively sort of standard stuff for a 38-year-old man. I've got some Lego. It was good. I had a good old little haul this year. It was very enjoyable. But let's move away from the Christmas Day shenanigans. Obviously, I think the gift that a lot of us wanted as Lincoln City fans was provided a couple of days before Christmas. Now, I'm aware this is slightly old news at this point, but it's the first time we're going to be able to talk about it on a podcast. But the news came in that Lewis Monsma has signed let me get this right, a phased multi-year contract extension with the Imps that sees him potentially staying with us until 2027. Fantastic news. I mean, obviously, I think it was myself and Chris. We were talking about this last week on the pod, and we said, look, I was there thinking that it was the end of January was the expiry date on his current contract. It's like, oh no, it's a week's time. We should probably get that one sorted then. And then sure enough, 2 days before Christmas, the club announced Lewis is staying, as it says, potentially until the end of 2027. Now, phased multi-year contract extension it's certainly a phrase, isn't it? It's one where we look at it and go, what does that mean? So without the specific details, I mean, it gives us a decent little spot to do some baseless speculation. So what do we suspect on that one, Charlie?
Well, first of all, what I suspect is it's not just simple. And I mean, it never is in football anymore, is it? You never just get a 2-year deal on £1,000 a week with a £50 goal bonus. Like the things like that are just deals of the past. Now it's like on Football Manager. You've got 101 different clauses that you can add into contracts, and obviously it's going to be the exact same in real life up to a certain point. Look, multi-phased, multi-year deal. It's probably going to mean that we, as a football club, and potentially Lewis as well, have exit clauses between now and 2027. Whether that's just the one exit clause, whether that's maybe two, whether that could be the end of this season and the end of next. Whether that is, like I say, just the one, maybe at the end of next season. So it's probably a smart move from us as a club. At the end of the day, we extended his contract for the 6 months up until basically now as a bit of a risk and as a little bit of a loyalty kind of prerogative to him of just saying, look, you've stuck by us. You're a great player. We've loved having you at the club. Stay on for 6 months. We'll help you get through your rehab. We'll help you finish off, make sure that you're fully fit and ready. We'll get you some game time. And then either at the end of those 6 months, you'll become a mainstay in the Lincoln squad again, or we will have helped you get to a point where you're back in the shop window and can move elsewhere to a different EFL football club. Now, Lewis then took that and effectively said, thank you. Oh, well, now I'm going to prove to you that it's Lincoln City that I should be playing at. And he's done that perfectly. He's stepped back into his role. He started to really look like what we saw back in the playoff season with him. So he's really impressed on that. And he's earned himself this extra deal. Now, we had this conversation, didn't we, Ben, actually, when we saw each other only a few weeks ago, when I was just on a train and suddenly Ben turned up. Honestly, it was the worst train journey ever, guys. And we were just sat having the conversation about Lewis Montsma, about, okay, what do we think is going to happen? And there was like a little bit of a debate around it, wasn't there? Because we were talking about, okay, if we offer something to him, is it now time for him to repay our loyalty by then signing it as a guarantee? Or actually, is there going to be more to it? And there will have been more to it, of course, because that's how every kind of football player, agent, and club negotiation goes. But the fact he has signed on to this, the fact that we've given it to him, not only shows the faith that we've got in him going forward, but also the faith that he's put back in us to kind of repay what we'd already placed in him. So it's clearly a really strong relationship between Lewis, the club, the fans, obviously, and it's backed up by his ability on the pitch as well. So really, really pleased to see him kind of get that deal. And let's be honest, as a fan, you can't hate Lewis Montsma. So really pleased to be able to see him in a Lincoln shirt for hopefully the next 2.5 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I think the conversation that we had was when I think we basically said, look, there's it felt like if we offered him something, then it would almost feel a little bit disrespectful if he turned it down. But then obviously you have to take into account things like how much is it going to be taken as a pay cut, because he's been out for a while, all the rest of it, everything like that. As soon as you start thinking in it that way, you go, yeah, all right, fair enough. I imagine that the club aren't going to, excuse my French, but the club aren't going to take the piss with it. They're going to offer what they think is a fair deal. Lewis has obviously had, there's obviously been some negotiation in and around it, and they've eventually come to the conclusion that they have, which is that Lewis is going to be staying with us. And I think it's just, it's a great solution all round. I think, he's been the past few weeks, particularly when he's been playing, despite the fact that, we obviously do need to manage his minutes, and it's one of the reasons that he didn't start yesterday. Oh, sorry, on Thursday. Again, don't know what day it is. The fact that he didn't start then just shows that the club are still managing the minutes and just making sure that everything is being done correctly. And I think being done right by Lewis is first and foremost. And I think Jez has said as much. You've got to look at these as individuals and people rather than footballers first and foremost. So, yeah, I think the club have done right by Lewis, and I think Lewis is now going to be repaying that for the next couple of seasons, I think. How do we think it is staged then, or phased? Because my suspicion is that this is going to be a potentially an 18-month with a year's option. We've seen these year-long options with other players. It seems to be a good little tactic that we've got now when it comes to the contracts. That's my suspicion. The fact that it's not just come out and said that, I think we're just talking off air briefly, it could be a little bit more complex than that. Maybe 6 months or to the end of the season, then another year after that if he's still fit, and then at the end of that, if he's still fit, he gets another year. Yeah, interesting one, isn't it?
It is. The fact that it's classed as a phased multi-year contract extension, weird. But at the same time, a lot of the contracts that we kind of come out and say have, like, let's say a 2+2 or a 3+1 or anything like that, a lot of those are for new signings. The fact that this is a January contract extension, maybe the phased is just to try and take any complication out of it, because you can't say, a 1 year plus a year because it's a January deal, and, might look a little bit clunky in press releases if you're saying 18 months plus a year, just little things like that. So maybe we are overcomplicating it by thinking it's going to be multiple steps throughout these 2.5 years. I don't know. Honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if it is just an 18-month with a year extension, or it maybe does have 1 or 2 extra clauses in there as well. Either way, I think the way that it will have been set up will be to the benefit of both us and Lewis, which again is exactly where we want it to be, because we want to make sure that a player is here and we're treating them fairly, as you've already said. So, at the end of the day, we're not going to have, exactly like you were just saying earlier on, try and take the piss as a football club. So maybe that's something that we can try and figure out throughout the transfer window when certain players come in, to see if we can work out exactly then how Lewis's contract fits into the mould of the rest of the squad dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, well, that's the good news over Christmas out of the way. Now let's.
So Bolton tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got to go into it. I mean, look, we it's in the title. We'll review Shrewsbury. Yeah, I was quite confident going into this game. You go in and you look at it on paper, and it's that age-old thing with us, isn't it? You go in, you've got the team that I think they were bottom before the game. You think, oh, well, we should roll these over. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. But then, of course, you've got the two sort of X factors in it of it's Lincoln City on Boxing Day, and they've also got Gareth Ainsworth as their manager. So, yeah, the confidence started to slip away a little bit. It obviously dropped quite a bit by 9 minutes in, but I think going into it, there was only one change. If I remember rightly, and that was Dom Jeffries coming in. And yeah, I felt going into it, seeing the lineup, I thought, okay, yeah, we get something early, we're in with a shout of a really big scoreline here. But unfortunately, it didn't quite happen like that. And yeah, I say 9 minutes in, if we run that corner routine, we get praise to high heaven by our fans. However, from a defensive point of view, their goal was a bit sloppy, wasn't it?
It was. Look, their goal was reasonably well worked, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was that strong that we can then sort of use that as an excuse defensively. And I'm not just going to come on here and just start bashing the defence, because we're going to leak silly goals throughout the season. It's a 46-game season. It's going to happen. It's just pretty typical that it's away from home against bottom of the league on Boxing Day, But yeah, defensively it was pretty poor. We shouldn't have allowed them to get through that side as they did. And also, I'm going to say it now, and I can say it as we joked in our group chat actually on Boxing Day. I'm going to say it now because Chris isn't on the podcast, so there's not going to be any goalkeeping union defending. But I don't think Wickens was in the best position. He shouldn't have been as far over as he was, as far over to his near post as he was. He should have had more faith in his defence. And then he could have put himself a little bit more centrally into the goal and then potentially been better placed for the actual goal, the actual shot coming in than he was in the end. So I do think that was quite poor as well. All in all, pretty shoddy from us, but it was still reasonably okay from Shrewsbury. And sometimes that does just happen. What then? The only problem is that it shouldn't happen, or at least it can't happen, when you are facing a Gareth Ainsworth side who are at home on Boxing Day. Conditions aren't great. Because, and Gaz wrote it perfectly in his article when he was talking about the Titanic and all of this, quite frankly, Gareth Ainsworth's sides will hold on to whatever little lead, or even if they just need a draw, that you give them. And that happens all the time. It's almost always happened with the Gareth Ainsworth side. We can remember many a time at Sincil Bank when they've time wasted. And some people will call it the dark arts and call it horrible and call it nasty and all of this. And yeah, to an extent, they're right. But at the same time, if it works, you kind of just have to applaud them for it to an extent as well, because we would applaud our teams for doing it just as we were doing under Danny and Nicky Carley back in the National League days. They've many times just time wasted from like the 10th minute, the 15th minute, the 20th minute. And if we give them a goal, 1-0 that early, again, when conditions aren't great, when we're also quite clearly from the rest of the 90 minutes we'll show you, not at our best, they're going to be able to hold on to it. And that is what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the comment there about not being at our best, I don't think there were really that many performances that would have come up smelling of roses on on Boxing Day. I think it was a pretty tough watch. I've seen a lot of people suggesting that it was awful, that it was just dreadful. It wasn't Crawley away, but it wasn't a great watch at all. I think again in Gaz's write-up, I know he's mentioned he said he's not going to single somebody out and then singles out Conor McGrandles. I don't think it was Conor's finest hour by any stretch of the imagination in the first half. I think, to be honest with you, Paulie O'Connor's game was probably stifled a little bit by the fact that he got booked inside 4 minutes for something that was completely innocuous. And that's another topic that we will touch on, because I didn't think the referee had a very good game for either side at all. But yeah, like you say, Ainsworth sides do I think I said to you just off air, like they do the wrong things in the right, in the right way. They kind of, they're clever with it. They will eat up a little bit of time here and there. And I think in Skubala's post-match, he said that there was only 28 minutes of football in the first half because of just how much time was being wasted. But it's hard to get a grip on that when it's, little tiny bits of time here and there. But I just felt really disappointed watching the game. It wasn't like Crawley when you can get a little bit angry at stuff, or you can just sit there and go, "What is going on?" Like it just, nothing seemed to click yesterday. And I'm really trying to pick out bits of quality from the first half, and really the only one that I can pick out is the shot from Dom Jeffries, where it was an absolutely beautiful ball across from Sean Rowan. Jeffries gets on the end of it, and quite how he didn't score, I don't know, but it was a really, really decent save in the end. Was there anything else that you could pick up from the first half? Because again, we've moaned and people have complained and said all sorts about the possession stats over the course of the season. I'm trying to dig out the possession stat here. We had the lion's share of the possession yesterday. I think it was up to about 70%. But it just didn't culminate in anything, did it?
No, it didn't. And I just want to touch on that actually, because there's been some conversations on obviously various different social media platforms and group chats and all of this about were we bad because we had to play with the ball on Boxing Day? Because I think that's sometimes a perception of this Lincoln City side, that we're so much better when we don't have the ball and when we have 30%, 35% of the ball and they're having to maybe quickly counter-attack or anything like that. Now, I'm happy to buy into that to an extent, but I'm also happy to disregard that as well, because there have been many an occasion, in fact, under Michael Skubala, that we have scored goals from perfectly free-flowing football where we've played out from the back on numerous occasions, or even having simply just played around on the edge of the area of our opposition. Peterborough away, for example, this season, we did that as like just one of the examples. And you think about situations like that, and it's, okay, well, we can do that. Are they one-offs? Also, no, because they happen enough. So why I wouldn't really use that as an excuse of, oh, well, they beat us because they just told us to have the ball.
Yeah.
I don't really buy into that fully.
I think to play into that as well, and I know that I can hear the comments already, like, yes, the fact that we were only, we were against 10 men, but we had 65% possession against Reading, and it's like, yeah, we were able to play a lot of free-flowing football then, and I thought we looked fantastic last week, never in doubt. But there is the caveat there of only playing against 10. So, yeah, we are capable of doing it. I'm in full agreement with you. It's just when you are up against a team that is, like you said, they've gone 1-0 up. They know exactly what they need to do to hold on to that. And I thought defensively, I thought Shrewsbury did very well yesterday. I keep saying yesterday, on Thursday. I thought they were, decent enough at the back. It was just trying to stifle us and stop us from playing in the way that we wanted to as much as we possibly could. It was just a frustrating watch, and I just felt a little bit disappointed by it. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about the referee for a little bit before we come on to the second half, because he didn't have a good game at all, did he? By any stretch of the imagination. I mean, booking Pordy O'Connor after 4 minutes for, I don't even know what it was for at this point. It was so innocuous. Like, even when I watched the replay back, I'm like, how is he giving a booking for that? That's and at that point, you expect, and we've said it before, if you're getting booked for that, you think there's going to be 10, 15 yellow cards in the game. Because if you're getting booked for something as innocuous as Pordy did, all of a sudden you've set the benchmark, and then that's it. Everything that happens like that, you'll get booked for. I think we even said in the group chat at one point, that there will be a silly red in this game, because I think on half an hour, Ethan Arahan gets fouled, and within 10 seconds, Ethan Arahan is booked before the ball is even kicked, to take the free kick. I genuinely cannot understand some of the decisions that were made by the referee yesterday.
No, neither. And like you say, he should and kind of did, but then also didn't follow through on a lot of them. Kind of set the tone immediately. And look, when it is a game like that in League One, and again, conditions not great on Boxing Day. The fog was obviously down. It wasn't great conditions for anybody in the ground at all, by all accounts. So things are always going to be that like little bit dirtier in inverted commas, if you like. It's kind of just the way that football seems to go, isn't it? So seeing a yellow card, like you say, for O'Connor so quickly, it just seemed a little bit daft. And it seemed like the referee wasn't taking any sort of context into account when he was just making decisions, and he was making them very quickly. Now, the Ethan one, I believe, the wording on that was that he got the yellow card for moving the ball from its spot for the free kick on numerous occasions after being told not to. But again, like, do you not get a chance for that? That's like giving somebody a yellow card in the first 5 minutes because they've tried to gain an extra 2 yards from a throw. Do you know what I mean? It's silly. That if it's repetitive, like I don't know, for example, if anyone listening or watching saw a good few weeks back, there was a Manchester United game and the goalkeeper, Onana, they were in the last minute of the game and they needed a goal, and the goalkeeper just kept on moving the ball forward for this free kick, and the referee was like, "We're not restarting until it is in the right position." But the goalkeeper just kept on trying to take liberties with it. Got himself a yellow card, wasted 50 seconds. The referee blew up as soon as he kicked the ball, and he wasted the best opportunity that they had at the end of the game. Now, in those situations, yellow card, 100%. 100% fair enough, because not only are you technically breaking the rules, you're also fully disregarding the referee's wishes at that point. That in the 30th minute, when he didn't really have the chance to properly be taking the piss with it over and over again, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's whether that's a referee who's just got a little bit of an ego on him, whether that's the referee actually seeing that something else has been going on and that was the last straw for Ethan, we'll never know, because fun enough, referees don't get interviewed after the games, which they very much should, by the way. But you know, so it's really difficult to kind of read into the mind of that, and then obviously it gets even more ludicrous at the end of the game, which we'll come on to in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the let's move into the second half. I mean, again, not a great deal to talk about from an exciting football perspective. It kind of came out and thought, okay, if we can put the pressure on fairly early, we can get back into this, and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to get ourselves back in and maybe come away with 3 points. But I think 5 minutes into the second half, we knew that wasn't going to happen, because again, an Ainsworth side was 1-0 up, and that was what they were there to get. So you say about ludicrous refereeing decisions, which again we will come to from our perspective, but there should have been a red card in that game yesterday. I think it was Mal Benning. He'd gotten himself booked for talking back to the referee shortly before, and then he just completely goes through the back of Jeffries. And if you watch it back, his studs are up like that. That's a yellow card all day long. He gets up and immediately runs away because he knows he's in trouble. And when you listen back to the commentary goes, now there could be, and he stops himself before he says it could be a red card because he knows that he's run away and the referee's not picked up on it. It was, if you're going to be giving out yellow cards for the softest of fouls in the early stages of the game, when you get to that point in the game, there's no excuse for that not being a yellow card. It was a bit of a nasty challenge, but again, not necessarily costing us the game, but it could have changed the complexion of it, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was one of those situations, probably from the referee, and again, we are only guessing, where in his mind, if the player wasn't already on a yellow, he would be getting one. I have a feeling that because he was already on a yellow, the referee bottled the decision to send him off. Which again he seemed to quite like doing in the game on Thursday. But yeah, it was just strange decision making, and to be fair, it was obviously just poor from the player, full stop, as well, to be doing that and going through the back of Jeffries in that manner. There's just obviously no need for it, and it wasn't exactly like a massive. It was like a tactical foul late on or anything daft like that. It was just reckless. It was just stupid. Should have been a yellow card. Should have been a second yellow. Should have been a red. The only thing is, honestly, I doubt that would have changed the complexion of the game as much as we'd like to think it would have done. So, you know, we're talking here and we're bashing the referee, as chances are Shrewsbury podcasts are doing today as well. And it's fully fair enough. So we can do that, but it's not like we're bashing him here saying, we would have won if it wasn't for him. Nothing like that. It's simply, he was just in the wrong, full stop, and just had a poor game.
It was just a poor performance from him all around. And I mean, let's look at it. I can't really recall too many chances in the second half. Obviously, I think Kadamatri had a couple. I think he had a diving header that went wide, and then he had one that I think he got a little bit wrong because it kind of came off his shoulder, or it came off the back of his neck and looped up and hit the bar. I mean, you know, if you turn around and talking to somebody in the game about the game, they say, "Oh yeah, you know, Lincoln probably could have got something out of it. I think we hit the bar." It's okay, that's interesting. But when you watch it back, it loops up, and the keeper had it covered anyway. But just not not a day for anybody to shower themselves in glory yesterday. But let's move into, probably the biggest talking point of the game, because I was sat there laughing when it happened, because I just thought that is absolutely ridiculous. How has that not been penalised anymore? Very, very late on. What's the timing on it? Actually, 88 minutes. There we go. 88 minutes. A ball comes across, and Dylan Duffy jumps up and palms the ball away from an incoming Shrewsbury player. The ball then drops to somebody else, and they score. And there's all kinds of was it Bloxham? I think it fell to. Scored, and there was all kinds of bedlam because they thought they'd scored, and then the referee says, "No, I haven't. You haven't scored. I've already given the penalty away. I've already given the penalty." That is quite possibly the most ridiculous penalty that I've ever seen given against us. I mean, legitimate penalty. I'm not going to include, Smodich's dive against Peterborough. That was something else. But in terms of a penalty where, yes, absolutely 100%, that is a penalty. How on earth? I mean, what's going through Dylan's mind at that moment? And how didn't he get sent off is the other question.
So it was really weird for me. So I was around at a friend's house, and we were watching it on his TV. And I got up to go get a beer out the fridge for us. And there I am in the fridge, and he just goes, "Oh, 2-0. So I turn around and I go, "Great." And he goes, "Wait, no, hang on. No, not 2-0. Penalty, handball." What? And so run back to the TV screen to try and figure out what on earth's going on. Obviously, we see that it's a penalty been given. And then I'm watching the replay. So I didn't see it live fully, but I'm watching the replay. And the replay, when it does a little slow motion and you get it from that perfect angle, and it's literally, he has just lifted up his arm, and it's not hit his arm, he has swiped the ball away.
He's punched it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, he has swiped the ball away. And what on earth is going through his mind with that? Now, look, young lad, he's made a mistake. Hopefully he knows that now. And whatever will happen with that. Again, it's not like we're going to be winning the game anyway, and it's not like it actually ended up massively costing us, which, again, massively ironic. But I just want to touch on the fact again of where's the red card? Now, I'm not going to come on here on the Stacey West podcast and start advocating for a Lincoln player to get a red card. But let's be honest here, that was as blatant of a red card as you can get. The only thing that I can think of is that the referee didn't quite see the fact that he swiped at it, just thought that he was jumping and falling and had flailing arms or something, and it just hit him. That's the only reason that I can think the referee has bottled the red card decision there. But again, I don't want to sit here and say, I don't know if he should have got a red card or whatever. But it was a silly mistake. He'll know that. And I just hope that he's going to kind of learn from that. I don't know what on earth would have been going through his mind. Was that kind of a mentality thing from maybe a couple of the players of, oh, look, 1-0 at this point, we've lost the game. I'm not saying he's done anything sort of purposely because he knows that we're losing or anything like that. But it's just silly, isn't it? It's just really silly.
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact is that the penalty gets taken by John Marquis, and I thought, oh, here we go. That's it. Yeah, 2-0 all day long. But no, George Wickens, again, made a good save. I think atoning for an error, if we can call it an error. I mean, we both think it probably was for the goal in terms of his positioning, but, atoned pretty well for that by making a second penalty save in the past few weeks. And it was a poor penalty as well from Marquis. Let's be fair.
It
really poor penalty.
It was honestly ridiculous. To be fair, I think the Shrewsbury commentators who I was listening to at the time, I think they probably summed it up pretty perfectly. They went, that goes in, everybody's hailing him for having such a cool penalty and just being so relaxed and all of this. But then when it doesn't go in, you look like a bit of a tosser, And I think, and let's be honest, I think he did. Couldn't have happened to a better striker.
But yeah, at that point, you do get, it almost felt like it was maybe a bit of a second wind. You think, right, okay, let's go and get it now. I think there was 6 minutes additional time.
Yep.
And as much as I wanted to sit there and go, oh great, we've got 6 minutes or 8 minutes at that point as it was, so let's go and get it. Let's do it. It unfortunately didn't happen. The game fizzled out, and we remain frustrated on Boxing Day, as we have tended to be for, well, the majority of my Lincoln City support in life. Yeah, disappointing one, but I mean, in the interviews afterwards, I think you could tell that Skubala was a bit irritated by the whole thing. I think he was, essentially coming out and just saying, we're not good enough, we need to get better. Although I did see a response to it saying that, some people think, what was it? I think they said, why is it that there's no urgency, or, that there was a little bit, it was a bit nonchalant with his response. It's like, what do you want him to do? Just come out and start openly panicking about things? Like it was, yeah, he's come out, he said what was going on. And I think hopefully we can turn it around and put in a decent performance tomorrow. But anything else on the Shrewsbury game, Charlie, or are we going to put it to bed and then go for a break?
I mean, I'd love to just put it to bed. Chalk it up to another Boxing Day mishap. A little bit of turkey hangover or whatever excuses that social media and such. We love to kind of coin different phrases like that, of course. But no, I just on what you're saying there, Ubala's smart in his media. He'll come out and he gives a good bit away. He'll tell the media exactly kind of what is being thought of in and around the camp, which I appreciate. But also, I don't want him just to come out and start bashing players because they've had a bad game. Let's not beat around the bush here. We had a previous manager who sort of lost his job for that, as well as many other factors, of course. But, that will have definitely contributed to it, the way that he was speaking in his last few interviews about certain players in the team. So, you kind of look at situations like that and you're like, we don't want to be going back to that. So let's actually just appreciate what it is that we've got in Skubala.
No, absolutely so. And and then hopefully if and when Skubala does leave, hopefully he won't become a bit of a meme for another club to try and find the source of a leak, as has allegedly happened at Northampton over the past few weeks. But right, we will call that a break. We'll be back very shortly. For those listening, for those watching, we'll say hello. And enjoy this message from this week's sponsors. Hey folks on YouTube, are we all well?
Oh, hello YouTube.
Just gonna pull a couple of messages up. So Steve Banks says, greetings from Perth, Western Australia. Hope you guys had a great Christmas. Shame about Boxing Day, but let's hope they put things right tomorrow. And another Steve, Mr. Jolland, says, seasonal greetings, chaps. 3 points tomorrow with a reaction to Boxing Day.
Wouldn't it be nice?
I think so. But I do have to chuckle at the alleged story coming out of Northampton. Of
brilliant.
Of somebody internally, somebody had apparently leaked the name of Mark Kennedy as their new manager. And it started to spread. And I think they were trying to find out who was leaking information from the club. Based on that. So it made its way to us and we all sat there with slack jaws at one point.
It was funny because the Northampton fan that I'd received that from, I then obviously rectified it by saying exactly what it was. Supposedly this kind of leak tester, if you like. I just replied, Mark Kennedy, former EFL manager, now used for this, and I think it's a pretty reasonable enough career trajectory, isn't it?
I feel for him in a way, but then at the same time, it's kind of the rod that he's made. But there we go. Right, we'll call that a break, and then we'll come back in, and we'll talk about some other bits. So cool. And there we go. Thank you to our sponsors for the week. Again, we never know who they are at this point. Presumably there is some New Year's nonsense going on with the adverts, as they tend to theme them a little bit. But let's talk about Bolton. So the Imps head away tomorrow on a Sunday, which I'd be interested to know the last time that we played on a Sunday is. It'll obviously be around the Christmas time. But yeah, the architects of our Boxing Day downfall last year were away tomorrow at the Tough Sheet Community Stadium. Hopefully, we won't be saying something that sounds a little bit similar afterwards. But yeah, what do we think then, Charlie? I mean, we do have a preview lined up. Do we want to go to that clip now and then we'll talk about it afterwards, or?
It's up to you. You're the host.
That's very true, actually.
Look, I'll start with the headlines, shall we, about Bolton. I'm not going to do them in like a whole news reporter sort of voice, but kind of from their season. So, they are a side who are struggling, who I think a lot of people, a lot of pundits would have predicted to be in and around quite comfortably that top 6 fight. Maybe not quite at that same level of Birmingham, but maybe in that kind of fighting for an automatic promotion spot, potentially happy enough with kind of being in 4th or 5th. But instead they find themselves, in fact, lower than us technically in the table on goal difference, on the same number of points, I believe, on 31 points. They sit in 10th. And honestly, that's one of the highest spots that they've been in for most of the season. They've struggled a lot over the course of this year. Ian Evatt has been bashed by a lot of Bolton fans. So it's going to very much kind of be interesting to see how he's able to turn it around throughout the second part of the season. Now, it is just interesting to know, although we are on the same number of points, they have got a couple of games in hand on us. So there's obviously only so much you can very much read into of the league positions. But yeah, they are struggling against a wide variety of teams this year as well. So there's not kind of this one common denominator on the way that teams beat them, but they have been most significantly poor defensively. And that's something that I think we can touch on with a few kind of extra stats and such in a minute. But let's have a little look, shall we, to see what your friend for the preview had to say.
Yeah, so I had a chance to chat with Ryan from Trotter Chatter. The full preview video is up on YouTube as we speak. But yeah, I asked him essentially what had gone wrong, at Bolton and where they currently are.
So obviously, like we were down in League 2 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we've worked our way up, progression year on year. And ever since the playoff final against an Oxford side, you think Bolton should be beating. We were absolutely battered at Wembley, and there's very much been a dark cloud over the club since. Evatt's been kept on, given a chance to get us up this season, and we haven't got going. We've lost to local rivals, absolutely battered by Stockport, battered by Wigan, battered by Huddersfield. Some really poor results, and I think we're almost equaling our home loss from last season so far, and we've only obviously got halfway through. So there's quite a lot of unrest with the fans. They feel as if Ian Evatt's taken us as far as he can go, but he's been given that sort of vote of confidence by the owners. So, yeah, very frustrating. You get to a point where you feel confident. You're like, right, let's get behind it again, and something's not clicking. I don't know if the players have given up, or I'm not sure, but yeah, we're sort of like a really diluted Man City, if you can compare it to that. A team you expect to do really well, something's not clicking, and we are where we are.
And there we go. I mean, I think that. Big thanks to Ryan for coming on, by the way. It was a bit late notice, but we managed to get him on, and we got a decent little preview out of that one. So go check it out on the YouTube channel. Yeah, I think that the key thing for me there is that he kind of said that the players have almost given up a little bit, and that they're not performing the way they should do. I mean, further on in the preview, we spoke about how they're tending to set up and how they're appearing in games to try and play. And it just sounds a little bit like they're maybe getting a bit fed up of Evatt in general. I mean, there is a comment here that says Evatt to be sacked on Sunday night. I mean, there's been instances where, we made a joke out of it a little while ago, didn't we? That, if a team loses to Lincoln and they're in a bad run of form, then they'll sack the manager. And the fact is that there are potentially 2 coming up over the next week that, I mean, one would be lovely to see, let's be fair. But the other one being Ian Evatt. It's going to be an interesting one. What do we think, Charlie? Do you reckon he is on the brink?
Yes and no. I also feel like I I feel like it maybe would have happened by now. That's the only thing. But
Yeah.
also, eve of the January transfer window, getting very close to that now. Very much they could be looking to make a change if they do want to make a change. And obviously, it depends on this result. I would be surprised if he gets sacked based off tomorrow's result. I would expect him to still get New Year's Day as well. But at that point, all we're doing is speculating. And then, to be fair, there's then a game like only a few days later as well, isn't there? On the 4th. Gosh, games come thick and fast over Christmas and New Year. Gotta love it, ain't you? So I would be surprised, honestly, if they did make that decision tomorrow. Although, again, it could happen. But look, I get, honestly, as well, why a lot of fans are starting to get a little bit annoyed in terms of Ian Evatt and the way that they are setting up. At the end of the day, they are playing reasonably poorly in a lot of their games. And like I said before we went to that preview, a lot of it is actually down to their defensive issues. They have only kept 4 clean sheets in the league all season. They're in 20th in the division for that. Now, okay, they are scoring a reasonable amount of goals, but it's not exactly the most in the league. They're only 8th. So kind of upper mid-table in terms of their goal scoring and their attacking output. Well, on the face of it, that's brilliant, as long as you're at least around that kind of same level in terms of your defensive output. But the fact that they aren't kind of shows why they are struggling quite as much as they are. They're actually conceding more than what their XG states that they should be conceding as well. They're not strong defensively in terms of their duels, in terms of their interceptions. And then what's most important, I think, is the fact that they are 23rd in the division for possession won in the final third per match. Now, that to me is one of those stats that I always like to look into whenever we face a team, because it just shows how much do that side try and press you and want to be on the ball from the first minute. And Bolton, clearly, reasonably enough, happy to either sit off or that they're simply poor at winning the ball in the final third. And that's something that, as a team, you, as fans, will be very, very disappointed when you see that happening, because you want your team to constantly be pressing high, constantly be winning the ball back. Because let's be honest, as fans, you want to see your team on the ball, don't you? So all of that makes it, again, very unsurprising as to the reasons why fans aren't exactly too best pleased with Ian Evatt's results and performances at the moment, and the way that he is setting that team up. Now, again, with that, it's difficult to say how much of that is Ian Evatt and how much of that is his team. Now, in past years, they maybe not necessarily needed to have the ball at every single moment of the game to be able to still create these moments of quality. Now, the problem is with that is that sometimes you're then relying on individual players to have those moments of quality. So then if you start on a bad run, mentality fades and it begins to snowball. And that's potentially what started to happen here. Now it's the question of, does he have the tactical nous to be able to turn that around and get them back on a run of form? At the moment, the answer to that is no. But it's going to be really interesting to see how we're able to then combat that on Sunday, because we're coming off the back of, okay, it is one poor result. But bearing in mind, we've only had one win in the league now in 7 or 8, and that was the Reading game, where, yes, we were incredible against Reading, but actually in a lot of the other games, there has been plenty of criticism left at our squad. And in some of the games, rightfully so, especially, for example, Shrewsbury. So that's going to be fresh in the mind. Bolton are also going to have that kind of mentality. So there's going to be a lot of the intangibles at play here on Sunday, I can imagine. Their home crowd, potentially, if we can get an early goal, or at least get at them early on, they could very much turn on their own side, which would hopefully aid our attack.
Yeah, and I mean, the key one, I think the key bit you mentioned there was about the mentality. The mentality for me is something, again, that Ryan picked up on in the chat, and he said that he doesn't think at the moment that they've got that kind of, well, again, without repeating the word, that mentality. I mean, Richard mentions there it's probably as good a time as any to play Bolton. He's absolutely right. I think they're in a bad spot mentally in the squad, and I don't think they're completely aware of how to turn it round and how to improve. improve on the way that they are at the moment. It's going to be a very tricky one for Evatt to turn around, and I don't think he'll be sacked tomorrow. I think, again, when I was chatting with Ryan, he said that it's probably one where he will get a bit of a reprieve, maybe have another window, maybe see what to do and hopefully get something. But it's not the season that we thought Bolton were going to be having. I think we all thought that they'd be up there. By the sounds of it, they're playing 3-5-2, similar setup to us, but they do still like their possession. They will still try and have as much of the ball as possible. They're not, like you say, they're not going to be all that aggressive when we have the ball in our own half. So it gives us an opportunity, and I think it's something that we've said before. When you've got a team that wants to play like that, it can potentially play into our hands, because we do have that aggressive mentality that we saw against Reading. From minute one, they were on it. They were all over the back four, or they were all over the back line of Reading. And I wonder if that's going to play into our hands more than anything else. Personally, I think if we can nick something early doors tomorrow, I think the crowd will be a big factor in this game, and I think it could turn very quickly. It could turn very sour very quickly against Bolton. So I think if we can really go at them in the first 10, 15 minutes, maybe get an early goal, or even if we just keep the pressure on them and stop them from playing the way they want to do, I think it could get ugly quickly, and it will play into our hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that's, again, the mentality that we're going to be taking into the game. It's 3:00 kickoff tomorrow, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what day of the week it is. But yes, it is, obviously, with it being the Sunday game. But yeah, so that's going to be kind of, a real interesting one. I believe that we are also, our fans in the lower tier tomorrow. I'll just double check on that. I don't believe they're shoving us up in the higher tier. And I think, by all accounts, we've got a decent number of following as well, especially, obviously, with the cheaper tickets and such that Bolton have done. Again, by the way, huge fair play to them for that. Lincoln fans, of course, will really appreciate that. And it'll be a great chance for as many people to be in the stadium watching the game tomorrow. And hopefully it delivered, sort of be promised a great spectacle. Now, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we line up tomorrow as well, because we've tried a few different shapes recently in terms of how we are playing. And a lot of that is obviously going to also depend on personnel as well. But it would be nice, honestly, if we could just see a little bit more attacking output than what we did, obviously, against Shrewsbury, and hopefully a little bit more like what it was against Reading, and some of that kind of free-flowing football again. And that will, realistically with that, we're probably relying on certain players to properly be at it. I'm thinking the likes of Rico, if he can properly be getting at defenders for Bolton, then we're going to have decent opportunities. Being able then to play balls into the likes of any number of House, kind of Archery, Makama, that would be great. And then again, the midfield, if we can just get a little bit more action from the midfield, willing to maybe move the ball themselves forward, especially if they're not going to be pressed as high as when we have in other games, could potentially mean that we are willing to play out from the back a little bit more rather than kind of playing a long ball style for a full 90 minutes. So that, again, could be quite an interesting way to see if we are then taking maybe a few more sort of risks and chances with the ball at our feet than maybe we have done in other games. And I feel like that is where a Marcus Cabala side can really shine. Not saying that we can do that every game, because you just can't. Tactically, it just simply won't work. But if we can maybe just try and utilise that a little bit over the course of the 90 minutes, or at least in the first half tomorrow, then hopefully, like you said, we'll be able to get at them nice and early and change the perception of how the game's going to go from their home fans' point of views.
Am I right in thinking that Ethan Arahan and Paudie O'Connor are suspended tomorrow? Accumulation. I think they might be.
What game number is this?
Ethan Arahan is on 5 yellow cards. Paudie O'Connor is also on 5 yellow cards.
It's been wiped. As far as I'm aware, it's been wiped.
Oh, okay. I thought it was in the new year.
I always thought it got wiped after 19.
Okay. So I mean, this will be game 23 for us.
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, it gets wiped at game week 19. gets moved up to the 10 yellow card marker at game 19. But we will make sure to double check that because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it was one of those things when Ethan got booked yesterday. I just thought that's his 5th, isn't it? And I thought to myself, is it for some reason just in my head it was always it's in the new year, it's in January that it gets wiped. But if it's based on the number of games or game weeks rather than the actual 1st of January, then fair enough.
No, game week 19.
Okay, cool. Well, we should be okay
confirmed.
then. Excellent. So there we go. So yeah, I mean, look, I think the thing for me is that if we can start the way that we did against particularly Huddersfield and particularly Reading, I think we're in with a very good shout of taking something from tomorrow's game. I just think the situation at Bolton at the moment, their fans aren't happy. If we can utilise that and maybe twist the knife a little bit, come away with something early, we'll probably see the game out. I think if it gets to 0-0, gets to half time and it's 0-0, I think we're in with a decent shout of pulling away 3 points as well. So there we go. Excuse me. Oh dear. It's typical, isn't it? Christmas, I always get ill. Right. So, good question from Steve actually says, any thoughts / info re Tyler not being on the bench for the last 2 games? I suspect it's probably just to sort of similar to what we've done with Lewis and easing back into things, easing back into the setup, get some game time when he can. And I don't think there was necessarily a rush to bring him back and have that potentially flare up anything that's there. I wouldn't read too much into it, is my thinking on that one.
Yeah, agreed. Look, for somebody like Tyler, again, as you've just said there, the exact same as what it was like for Lewis, we are always going to have to make sure that we are being extra careful, maybe even over and above the normal level of duty of care that we would for any other player when they are coming back from injury, especially with Tyler. He's had, so much time out on the sidelines. It was so nice to kind of see him come back in, but I think we've probably just got to temper our expectations with that and hope, maybe expect to not quite see him week in, week out. Saying that, though, it would still be nice to see him on the bench and in and around the squad. So maybe that's something that we'll see. I think if we don't see it against either Bolton or Rotherham, then we can maybe think has there been another little bit of an issue. But only 2 games, I'm not really reading too much into that at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right. Final bit of news. I mean, well, let's touch on something that isn't necessarily Lincoln City related. You did say briefly there, Charlie, about the Bolton ticket pricing being very fair for the Imps fans tomorrow. We've got to touch on Tamworth because it's a farce, isn't it? I mean, I can see the reasoning behind it because they need to pack the ground out. They want to get as much money as they can. But Tamworth obviously face Tottenham in the next round of the FA Cup at home, and they have doubled their ticket prices. So for an adult standing ticket, an adult seated ticket is £42, and an adult standing ticket is £38. I appreciate that they want to get as much money out of this as they possibly can, but that is ludicrous. And I know you have a slightly different take on it.
I don't want to bash Tamworth Football Club for this. I want to bash the FA for putting them in this position because is there an argument that if we still had replays and they were holding out for the hope of a replay, they wouldn't have even thought about increasing their prices in this manner? So as far as I'm concerned, every club decision that is made that is by a club that's outside of the Premier League this season or any future season in the FA Cup, I am blaming solely on the FA Cup, on the FA and on the big 6 Premier League teams and the rest of the Premier League as a whole. It is ridiculous. They shouldn't be charging the fans that much. They shouldn't be charging any fans that much for an FA Cup game at a non-league stadium. It's not right, but they need the money in. And they know that they'll sell it. The only worry is straight after Christmas, fortunately, they're going to be alienating families that have been to every single game this season. There's going to be kids that are having to miss out on the game, which isn't right. Of course it isn't. And I hope that they do think about changing the decision, or at least Tottenham will step forward and say, look, reverse the prices, have them as your normal prices, and we will give you the rest. We'll give you the difference, something like that. That is a perfect future scenario here. That is going to happen though, because Big Six clubs they might give their half of the gate receipts or whatever.
Spurs will give them their half of the pot, I imagine, but that's kind of as much as you're going to get. I mean, yeah, look, under 10s, 29 quid to sit, and the thing is, initially I sat there and I thought, oh, cool, yeah, they give the season tickets their normal price, charge a little bit more for the day trippers. That's fine. I know, obviously, we've had a conversation, and you're not going to be able to do that due to FA rules and all the rest of it. But charging 25 quid to make an under 10 stand on the terrace, it's not for me. It's not for me. But, right.
Not at all.
And yeah, somebody did actually say that it's a very fair point that we didn't raise our ticket prices that much when we had our big FA Cup run. So yeah, there we go. But right, we are hurtling towards an hour, so we've got one more little bit of news, and we've got a new kit, Charlie.
Yes, we have. We have got a brand new kit that is going to be seen for one time and one time only. And in fact, I really hope that's how Alan Long is going to be presenting it as well when we walk out the tunnel in that game. But yeah, at home against Peterborough, we will be donning a brand new red and white kit. I mean, first of all, before we talk about the reasons, Ben,
there it is.
Thoughts on the kit?
I quite like it. It's got very big 98, 99 vibes for me. Was it 98, 99 or 97, 98? Yeah, it's kind of got that, the thicker stripe and then the thinner ones either side. I quite like it, and I'm probably going to grab one. What about yourself?
Well, I'm not planning on running down to the club shop to go and buy one, I'll be honest, for multitude of reasons. Look, it's nice enough. Yeah, maybe it does look like the 90s. I don't know what born. It's nice enough, and also, let's be honest, it is done for a very nice purpose as well. So it is there to be raising money for local people in need as well, and it's kind of really nice to see the club getting involved in those sorts of campaigns, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for £5 from every shirt sale is going straight to Let Them Eat Cake, which is a charity dedicated to helping people on the streets of Lincoln. And every £5 that goes to the charity will also be matched by the club sponsor, Branston, who have launched Nana Tate potatoes, who I think it's kind of a spin-off of Branston potatoes, and that's going to be adorning the front of the shirt. But no, I quite like that. So definitely late 90s vibes for me, which, yeah, is kind of when I really started falling in love with the club. So absolutely gets thumbs up from me. But that is probably the length of news that we have for the Imps this week. I don't really think there's anything else. I mean, yeah, again, Crimbo Limbo's got to me. My head is all over the shop. It's Saturday evening. I honestly didn't think that we would be playing on a Sunday anytime soon, but here we are. For those of you that are heading down to Bolton, down, up, across, up.
It's up.
Yeah,
it's up.
Yeah,
it's up.
My geography's not very good.
Clearly,
everyone that's heading up to Bolton, have a really good day. Hopefully, the Imps can bring 3 points back. I think Chris and Gaz will be with you on Monday, so there's not much of a turnaround before the next podcast. But that has been episode number 344. And until next time, up the Imps.
Up the Imps.